The laboratory smelled like ozone and desperation. Angstrom Levy's hands trembled as he calibrated the dimensional aperture for the 7th time in 3 hours. Sweat beaded on his enlarged forehead, each drop a reminder of what the multiverse had done to his mind. He could see them now, infinite versions of Mark Grayson, infinite ways the Viltrumite had ruined everything. But among those infinite possibilities, there had to be one world that contained something capable of stopping him. Something that could make Mark Grayson bleed. The portal framework hummed reality bending like heated glass. Angstrom had seen it in Universe 4782, a being of such concentrated violence that even the local Viltrumites gave that world a wide berth. A warrior, a weapon, the perfect answer to his problem. His fingers danced across the control panel. Coordinates locked. Dimensional frequency matched. The aperture tore open with a sound like fabric ripping, except the fabric was space itself, and the tearing went all the way down to quantum foam. Green light spilled from the other side. Angstrom smiled. Finally. Then the numbers started cascading wrong. The frequency destabilized. The targeting matrix collapsed. Angstrom's smile died as he watched the dimensional coordinates shift wildly across the display, cycling through universe designations he'd never intended to touch. The portal writhed its edges, fraying like a wound that wouldn't close. No. Something fell through. Not the calculated extraction, not the controlled retrieval of a being he could negotiate with manipulate aim at Mark Grayson like a loaded gun. This was raw displacement. A body tumbling through the gap between realities, ripped from wherever it had been and dumped into a world that had no context for what it was. The portal collapsed with a thunderclap that shattered every piece of glass in the lab. Angstrom staggered back, ears ringing, watching the aperture seal itself like scar tissue. The dimensional coordinates were gone. No way to track what he'd pulled through. No way to know where it had landed. He stared at the ruined equipment, at the smoke curling from fried circuits, and felt something cold settle in his chest. Somewhere out there, something had just arrived, uninvited. The Mojave Desert stretched flat and merciless under the afternoon sun. Heat shimmered off cracked earth that hadn't seen rain in 3 months. Nothing moved except dust devils and the occasional vulture riding thermals 2,000 feet up. Then the air tore open. No warning, no buildup. Reality simply split like overripe fruit, and a body crashed through onto the hardpan with enough force to crater the ground 30 feet across. Dust exploded outward in a perfect circle. The shock wave rattled windows in a truck stop 12 miles away. Broly lay motionless in the center of the impact crater, half buried in pulverized stone. His breathing came shallow and uneven, blood mixed with dust on his face. The dimensional transit had felt like being pulled through broken glass, every cell screaming, every nerve alight with wrongness. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know how he'd gotten here. The last thing he remembered was training on another world, entirely pushing limits under a purple sky. Then light. Then pain. Then this. Broly's fingers dug into the shattered earth. His body felt heavy, distant, like it belonged to someone else. But the instincts remained. Survival instincts honed across years of isolation, across a lifetime of being something people feared. He pushed himself up slowly. Dust cascaded off his shoulders. His Saiyan armor had held but barely cracks spiderwebbed across the chest plate. The fur pelt hung torn at his waist. Broly stood in the center of the crater and looked around. Desert, emptiness, sky too blue, Everything felt wrong, too light, too sharp, like the planet itself was rejecting him. He took a step forward and nearly fell. His legs shook. Whatever had pulled him here had drained him badly. Not injured, but depleted. Running on reserves he didn't have. Broly's jaw tightened. He recognized this feeling. Weakness, vulnerability. The same sensation he'd felt as a child when the collar locked around his neck and someone told him to be still, be silent, be useful. His aura flickered green for half a second before dying. Not here. Not now. Save it. He climbed out of the crater 1 foothold at a time, hauling himself up the 30-foot slope of displaced earth. When he reached the rim, he stopped, scanned the horizon. Nothing. Just desert stretching in every direction like a test he hadn't signed up for. Broly started walking. Not toward anything, just away from the crater, away from the evidence of arrival. The sun beat down on his bare shoulders. His boots crunched on hardpan. Each step cost more than the last, but he kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant processing where he was, and how impossibly lost that made him. He walked for 20 minutes before the drones found him. 300 miles away, in a bunker built to survive nuclear war, Cecil Stedman was halfway through his 4th cup of coffee when the alert came through. "Sir, we have an anomaly." Cecil didn't look up from the threat assessment report he was reading. Define anomaly. Seismic event in the Mojave. Impact signatures similar to a meteor strike, but no object detected entering atmosphere. Ground sensors registered the shockwave at magnitude 4.2. Now Cecil looked up. Magnitude 4.2 from an object that didn't exist 10 seconds before impact. "Yes, sir." Cecil set down his coffee. "Show me." The main display flickered to life, showing satellite footage of the desert. The crater stood out like a wound, fresh, circular, precisely 30 feet across. Thermal imaging showed residual heat consistent with kinetic impact, but the infrared spectrum was all wrong. Too much energy dispersal. Too even. "Get me a visual." The feed switched to a high-altitude drone already repositioning over the site. The image resolved slowly, a crater dust still settling, and zoom in. The camera tightened on the figure climbing out of the impact zone. Human-shaped, bipedal, moving with the deliberate care of someone testing their own body for damage. Cecil leaned forward. "Is that unknown, sir?" Preliminary analysis suggests humanoid physiology, but the energy signature doesn't match any known meta-human profile. Doesn't match or doesn't register. Both, sir. It's like there's something there, but our sensors can't get a clean read. The signature keeps fluctuating. Cecil watched the figure reach the crater's rim and pause. Even through the grainy drone feed, there was something off about the way it moved. Too controlled. Too aware. Like a predator checking for threats. "Where's Invincible?" "Mark Grayson is currently responding to a structural fire in Detroit. ETA to Mojave is approximately 8 minutes if we pull him now." "Pull him, and get Eve on standby." Cecil tapped the display, marking the figure with a targeting reticle. "I want a full containment team in the air within 3 minutes. No engagement until I give the word." "Sir, what if it's hostile?" Cecil watched the figure start walking across the desert, each step measured and exhausted. "Then we'll find out the hard way. Move." The operations center erupted into controlled chaos. Orders relayed, assets deployed. The machinery of the Global Defense Agency grinding into motion with the smooth efficiency of an organization that had learned the hard way what happened when you weren't fast enough. Cecil kept his eyes on the screen. The figure walked with its head down, shoulders hunched slightly, not aggressive posture, not threatening, just tired. But Cecil had been doing this job long enough to know that tired things could still be dangerous, especially things that fell from nowhere and hit the ground hard enough to crack bedrock. 3 minutes to containment team arrival, someone called out. Sir, we're picking up additional seismic activity near the impact site. Cecil's jaw tightened. What kind of activity? Secondary tremors, small ones. Like aftershocks, but they're increasing in frequency. On screen, the figure stopped walking. Its head turned slightly as if listening to something only it could hear. Get me audio, Cecil ordered. The feed crackled with desert silence, wind, the distant rumble of approaching helicopters. And underneath it all, something else. A low vibration that didn't sound like it came from the earth at all. It sounded like it came from the figure itself. The tremors increased. Dust began to lift off the desert floor in small spirals around the stranger's feet. Cecil picked up his phone. This is Stedman. We have a potential crisis-level situation developing in the Mojave. I need Mark Grayson here 5 minutes ago. The voice on the other end didn't argue, didn't ask for clarification, just acknowledged and disconnected. Cecil set the phone down and watched the stranger walk through the desert while the world scrambled to figure out what it was before it decided to stop being cooperative. The stranger didn't look up, didn't acknowledge the drones now circling overhead, just kept walking 1 foot in front of the other, like someone who had nowhere to go and no reason to hurry. Cecil had seen that kind of body language before, usually right before everything went to hell. 2 minutes to contact, someone reported. Cecil nodded. He didn't take his eyes off the screen. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that maybe Angstrom Levy had just made a mistake that would cost more than anyone was ready to pay. Cecil ignored the voice. He had a job to do. But he doubled the size of the containment team anyway, just in case. The helicopters came in low and fast rotors, thumping like war drums across the desert floor. Broly heard them before he saw them. 8 distinct engines coordinated approach tactical spacing. He stopped walking and turned his head toward the sound. His instincts cataloged threats automatically. Air vehicles, armed, converging from multiple vectors to prevent escape routes. Professional. Broly didn't run. Running meant guilt. Meant they'd chase harder. He just stood there, waiting as the first chopper crested a dune and spotlights hit him like accusations. Cecil watched through the drone feed as his containment team established a perimeter. 8 helicopters formed a loose circle at 300 yards, close enough to respond, far enough to retreat if things went wrong. Ground units were still 6 minutes out. Armored personnel carriers rolling across the desert, laden with equipment designed to restrain things that shouldn't need restraining. The figure stood motionless in the center of the ring. Hands at its sides. No defensive posture. No aggressive movement. Target is stationary, the team lead reported. Awaiting orders. Cecil leaned back in his chair. Something about this felt wrong. Not wrong like a trap, wrong like a misunderstanding that was about to get expensive. Hold position. Do not engage. Copy that. Holding. On the second monitor, another marker blinked Invincible inbound 2 minutes out. Cecil had pulled Mark from the fire in Detroit without explanation. Just a priority code that meant drop everything and move. The kid would have questions. He always did. Cecil would answer them later. Right now, he needed eyes on the ground from someone who could survive being wrong. Mark broke the sound barrier somewhere over Nevada and immediately regretted it. The sonic boom rattled windows across 3 counties. People would complain. Cecil would add it to the file of things Mark needed to be more careful about. But when Cecil used priority codes, careful went out the window. The Mojave sprawled below him, a sea of nothing interrupted by the unmistakable signature of a GDA operation. Helicopters, spotlights, the coordinated dance of people trying to contain something they didn't understand. Mark descended fast, bleeding off speed in a controlled spiral that put him between the choppers and whatever they were pointing at. He landed 20 yards from the figure and immediately understood why Cecil had scrambled everyone. The stranger was humanoid, but wrong in ways Mark couldn't articulate. Too dense, maybe. Too solid. Like reality had to work harder to accommodate his presence. He wore armor that looked ancient and modern at the same time, leather and metal cracked and blood-stained. His hair hung wild and dark. His eyes tracked Mark's arrival with the flat awareness of something that had stopped being surprised by threats a long time ago. "Hey," Mark said, raising one hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture for non-aggression. "I'm invincible. You okay?" The stranger didn't answer, didn't move, just watched Mark with the patience of stone. Mark's earpiece crackled. Cecil's voice tight with control. "Mark, do not approach. We don't know what we're dealing with." "He doesn't look hostile, Cecil. He looks exhausted. Exhausted things can still be dangerous." Mark took a slow step forward. The stranger's eyes followed the movement, but nothing else changed. No tension, no preparation to fight or flee. "What's your name?" Mark tried again. Silence. The wind kicked up dust between them. Behind Mark, another shape descended, pink and white suit, controlled landing. Eve touched down at Mark's shoulder, her hands already glowing faintly with restructured matter. "Cecil called me in," she said quietly. "What are we looking at?" "I don't know. He's not talking." Eve studied the stranger with the analytical eye of someone who saw the world as equations. "He's hurt. Look at the way he's standing, favoring his left side. And that armor's damaged. He went through something." "Yeah, but what?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Mark looked back at the containment perimeter. 8 helicopters, guns, trained tension thick enough to taste. One wrong move from anyone, and this turned into a firefight. He made a decision. "I'm going to try something," Mark said. "Mark." But he was already moving, flying back to the nearest helicopter. He landed on the skid, leaned in through the open door, and grabbed 2 things, a bottle of water and a field ration pack. The crew chief looked at him like he'd gone insane. "Sir, those are—" "I know what they are." Mark flew back slower this time, hands visible and non-threatening. He landed a few feet from the stranger and held out the water. "You look like you could use this." The stranger's eyes dropped to the bottle. Something flickered across his face, confusion maybe, or suspicion. But underneath it, Mark caught something else. Recognition. Not of Mark, not of the water, but of the gesture itself. Broly stared at the offering. Water. Simple, direct, no threat, no demand. He didn't trust it. He'd seen kindness used as a weapon before. Paragus had been kind when it served him. Kind when he needed control, kind when the collar was tightening and resistance was futile. But this young man with the yellow suit and earnest face didn't carry the same smell as Paragus. No calculation in the eyes, no manipulation in the stance. Just concern. Broly's hand moved before his mind finished processing. He took the water bottle, his fingers dwarfing it. The plastic crinkled under his grip. He opened it with exaggerated care, raised it to his lips, and drank. The water tasted like dust and metal, but it was cold, real. The first real thing since he'd crashed here. He lowered the bottle and met the young man's eyes. "Thank you," Broly said. His voice came out rough, unused. Mark's face lit up. "You're welcome. I'm Mark. This is Eve." Broly looked at the woman with pink energy dancing around her hands. She offered a small nod, careful and measured. "Broly," he said, because names were simple and names didn't require explanations. "Broly," Mark repeated. "Okay, good. That's good. Listen, these people." He gestured at the helicopters. "They're just scared. They don't know who you are or where you came from. If you could just answer some questions, maybe we can—" The sound cut through everything else. A high-pitched whine building in frequency. Broly's head snapped toward it, body going rigid. 50 yards away, partially obscured by a dune, a GDA technical team was setting up equipment. Dish arrays, sonic projectors, and at the center, a device that looked like a collar with too many antennas. Broly's pupils dilated. His breathing changed. Mark saw it happening and didn't understand it yet. "Wait, what are they?" The whine intensified. Not loud, not painful, but wrong in a way that bypassed thought and went straight to instinct. Broly dropped the water bottle. His aura flickered green. "Cecil, what the hell are they doing?" Mark's voice went sharp. In the bunker 300 miles away, Cecil's jaw tightened as he watched the thermal readings spike. "Activating containment protocol. If he's a threat, we need leverage." "You're going to make him a threat." But the technicians were already bringing the device online. The whine shifted into a focused pulse, invisible but present, a sonic frequency designed to disrupt metahuman nervous systems, to create compliance through discomfort. It hit Broly like a fist to the base of his skull. The collar, the shocks, the voice telling him to kneel, to obey, to be useful or be nothing. His vision tunneled. Green light erupted from his body in a shock wave that flattened the sand for 30 feet in every direction. Mark threw himself in front of Eve as the blast wave hit them. The force drove him back 10 yards, boots carving trenches in the desert floor. When Mark looked up, Broly had changed. Not transformed. Not yet. But something had shifted behind his eyes. The careful control was fracturing. His muscles bunched beneath the damaged armor. His breathing came in short, sharp bursts. "Turn it off," Mark shouted into his earpiece. "Turn it off right now." Cecil's voice was ice. "Negative. We need to establish—" "You're going to get people killed." The sonic device pulsed again. Broly's roar split the desert. It wasn't human. Wasn't a scream of pain. It was pure defiance, given voice, the sound of something that had been pushed too far and refused to break quietly. The green aura exploded outward, bright enough to wash out the helicopter's spotlights. Energy crackled across Broly's skin like living lightning. The ground beneath his feet began to crack in a spiderweb pattern, radiating outward with each heartbeat. Mark understood now. Too late, but he understood. This wasn't an invasion. This was a victim. And they just hit the trigger. Broly looked at Mark one last time. His expression wasn't angry. It was something worse. Betrayed. Then he moved. The first helicopter never saw him coming. Broly covered the distance in a blink faster than Mark's eyes could track and drove his fist through the engine block. Metal screamed. The rotor assembly tore free, spinning into the desert like a discus. The helicopter dropped everyone inside, scrambling for emergency exits. "Weapons free," someone shouted. "Belay that." Mark's voice cracked with desperation. "Everyone stand down. But training and fear don't listen to reason." The other helicopters opened fire. Bullets sparked off Broly's aura like rain on glass. He didn't dodge, didn't flinch. Just stood there as the rounds disintegrated against his energy field, face empty of everything except grim acceptance. Of course they shot him. Why wouldn't they? Everyone always did. Broly clenched his fists, and the energy around him pulsed brighter. The sonic device screamed one more time, and he turned toward it with the inexorable focus of a landslide finding downhill. Mark flew to intercept, positioning himself between Broly and the technical team. "Stop! Please, they'll turn it off. Just give them a second." Broly looked at him. Really looked at him. At the young man who'd offered water and kindness. At the person who might have been an ally in a different world. "Move," Broly said. His voice was quiet, flat, final. Mark didn't move. And somewhere in a bunker 300 miles away, Cecil Stedman watched his containment protocol turn into exactly what he'd been trying to prevent. A disaster. The first punch came so fast that the technical team didn't have time to run. Broly crossed the 50 yards in a heartbeat, feet barely touching sand. His fist drove into the sonic array with the precision of someone who knew exactly which part to break. The framework exploded. Metal shrapnel spun outward in lazy arcs, trailing sparks. The whine died mid-pulse. Silence crashed down like a hammer. Then Broly kept moving. He didn't hunt the technicians, didn't even acknowledge them as they scattered screaming into radios for extraction. His focus locked onto the next threat, a drone hovering 30 feet up, camera tracking his every move. Broly jumped. The ground cratered where he'd stood. He caught the drone mid-flight, crushed it one-handed, and let the wreckage fall. "All units pull back." Cecil's voice cut through every channel. "Establish perimeter at 500 yards. Do not engage." But momentum has its own logic. 2 helicopters were already swinging around for firing solutions. Broly landed and turned toward them with the mechanical certainty of someone following a script written into his bones. Mark flew into his path. "Wait, just wait." Mark held up both hands, hovering between Broly and the choppers. "Nobody else has to get hurt." Broly stopped. Not because Mark blocked his way. Because the young man's voice carried something Broly recognized. Desperation. "Please," Mark said. "They're scared. That's all. If you just..." The sonic device mangled, but not completely destroyed, sparked. Exposed circuits met torn wiring. Electrical feedback surged through the damaged framework, triggering a half-frequency pulse, weak, erratic, unintentional. But close enough to the original sound. Close enough to the caller. Broly's eyes went wide. Then empty. The green aura detonated. Mark had fought Viltrumites, had taken punches that leveled city blocks, had been thrown through mountains, and walked away bleeding, but standing. This was different. The shock wave hit him like a wall of compressed reality. Not heat, not force. Just pressure that didn't care about durability or willpower or Viltrumite DNA. Mark flew backward, tumbling through the air, no control, no orientation. He crashed through a dune hard enough to vaporize the sand and kept going. Eve screamed his name. Broly didn't hear her. Didn't hear anything except the phantom echo of electricity and his father's voice telling him to be still, be useful, be controlled. His muscles swelled. His aura burned brighter, shifting from translucent green to something solid and terrible. The ground beneath him didn't crack, it liquefied. Sand turned to glass in concentric circles, radiating outward with each breath. The helicopters banked hard, pilots fighting for altitude. One didn't make it. The rotor wash caught the edge of Broly's energy field, and the aircraft simply inverted. Metal screamed. The chopper slammed into the desert, upside-down rotors chewing into hardpan before the frame buckled. The crew scrambled out alive but shaking. Broly turned toward the next helicopter. Eve dropped between them, hands blazing pink. Matter restructured at her command air molecules, compressing into a barrier, invisible but absolute. "Stop! You don't want to do this." Broly's fist hit the barrier. The shield held for exactly 1 second. Then it shattered like sugar glass. The feedback jolted Eve backward, pain spiking through her nervous system as her own power recoiled against her. She hit the ground hard, vision swimming. Broly stepped past her, not with malice, not with triumph, just with the terrible focus of someone who'd learned that threats don't stop until you make them stop. The helicopter crew saw him coming and bailed. Smart. They hit the sand, running, abandoning the aircraft to whatever came next. Broly grabbed the landing skid and pulled. Metal shrieked. Bolts sheared. The entire helicopter flipped like a toy, rotors disintegrating as centrifugal force tore them apart. Broly released it, and the wreckage tumbled across the desert, a fireball blooming, where the fuel tanks ruptured. 300 miles away, Cecil watched his operation collapse in real time. "Sir, we've lost containment." Repeat, full containment failure. "I can see that." Cecil's voice was arctic. "Get everyone out, now." "What about Invincible?" "He'll survive. The technicians won't." On screen, Broly stood in the center of a wasteland he'd created in 90 seconds. Melted glass, burning wreckage, dust clouds rolling outward like nuclear fallout. His chest heaved. Energy crackled across his skin in random arcs, bright enough to leave after images on the satellite feed. Cecil had seen powerful things before. Omni-Man leveling cities, Viltrumites tearing through armies. But this felt different. This felt personal. "Sir, we're detecting atmospheric disturbances, temperature spikes, seismic activity increasing." "I don't need a weather report. I need solutions." "There are no solutions, sir. We can't contain this." Cecil's hands pressed flat against the desk. He'd made a calculation, tried to establish control before things escalated. Standard procedure for unknown meta-humans. He'd just learned that some things don't respond to procedure. Keep the perimeter, document everything, and find me Mark Grayson. Died. Mark dug himself out of the sand 1/2 mile from the impact site. His suit was shredded across the chest. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his mouth. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. But he was alive. He pushed off the ground, wobbling vision tunneling. Through the haze he saw the smoke columns, heard the distant crack of metal cooling too fast, smelled burning fuel and ozone and something else, something that made his Viltrumite instincts scream warnings about territory and dominance and things that shouldn't exist. Mark flew back toward the chaos. He found Eve first kneeling in the sand, hands shaking. She looked up when he landed, relief and fear mixing on her face. "Are you okay?" Mark asked. "I'll live." "He didn't mean to hurt me, I think. He just..." She gestured helplessly at the destruction. "Mark, what is he?" "I don't know, but we made this worse. Cecil made this worse. We're part of Cecil's system." Mark's jaw set, which means it's on us to fix it. He scanned the battlefield. Broly stood 200 yards away, motionless, except for the energy field that writhed around him like a living thing. No more helicopters, no more drones. Just one figure surrounded by the evidence of what happened when you tried to cage something wild. Mark started walking toward him. "Mark, don't..." "He didn't kill anyone, Eve. You noticed that he could have. He's strong enough, fast enough. But every helicopter he hit, He waited until the crew bailed. Every target he destroyed was equipment. Eve stared at him. "You're defending him. I'm trying to understand him." Mark kept walking, hands, visible posture open. "Because if we don't, the next team Cecil sends won't ask questions. They'll just hit harder. And if he hits back, then I'll deal with it." Mark closed the distance slowly. 1 step, 2. Broly's head turned fractionally, tracking the movement, but not reacting. The green aura pulsed in time with his heartbeat, each surge sending ripples through the air. "Broly," Mark called out. "I know you can hear me." No response. Just that terrible, patient stillness. "They hurt you, I get it. That device, it did something. Reminded you of something bad." Mark stopped 20 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react if things went wrong. "But you don't have to keep fighting. Nobody's trying to control you anymore." Broly's eyes shifted, met Mark's. And for a moment Mark saw past the rage and the power to something underneath. Pain. Old pain. The kind that doesn't heal because it never gets acknowledged. "We screwed up," Mark said. "Cecil screwed up. I screwed up by not stopping him faster." "But you didn't kill anyone. That counts for something." "They shot me," Broly said. His voice came out rough, scraping. "You gave me water. Then they shot me." The words hit Mark harder than the shockwave had. Not an accusation, just a statement of fact. This is what always happens. Kindness followed by violence. Hope followed by betrayal. "I know, but," Mark said. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't stop it." "No, it doesn't." Mark took another step forward. "But maybe we can." Broly's aura flared. Mark flinched, but didn't retreat. Behind him he heard Eve preparing to intervene, power humming in the air. Then something changed. A distant sound. Low, rhythmic, growing louder. Broly turned toward it, body language shifting from defensive to alert. Mark heard it too now. Jet engines, multiple, coming in fast and high. "Cecil," Mark breathed. "Don't." 6 fighter jets screamed overhead in formation, afterburners lighting up the desert sky. They didn't fire, didn't lock weapons, didn't even break formation. Just flew a tight reconnaissance pattern that said, "We see you, we can reach you, and we're deciding whether it's worth the cost." Broly watched them pass. His energy field intensified, green light washing out the afternoon sun. The air around him began to distort heat haze, mixing with something that made reality look thin. Mark's earpiece crackled. "Mark, get clear. We're authorizing a full strike if he escalates." "He's not escalating, you are." "He destroyed 3 helicopters and put 7 people in the hospital. Because you tortured him." Static. Then Cecil's voice, colder than Mark had ever heard it. "I'm trying to protect the planet, Mark. If you can't help with that, get out of the way." The jets banked for another pass. Broly's hands clenched. His breathing accelerated. Energy arced between his fingers, bright enough to leave scorch marks on the glass beneath his feet. Mark made a choice. He flew directly into Broly's line of sight and spread his arms. "You want to hit something, hit me. But those jets..." Mark jerked his head skyward. "They're just following orders. Scared orders from scared people. You taught me something today. About how easy it is to be the threat when you're just trying to survive." Broly stared at him. The aura didn't diminish, didn't waver. But it stopped growing. "I'm not moving," Mark said. Not until you understand that I'm not them. I'm not the collar. I'm not the cage. I'm just a kid trying to figure out how to do the right thing when the system keeps making it impossible. The jets roared past again. Broly's eyes tracked them. Mark saw the calculation happening behind that gaze trajectory speed vulnerability. Broly could reach those planes, could tear them apart before the pilots knew they were in danger. But he didn't. He turned back to Mark instead. "They'll come back," Broly said. "Yeah, probably. You'll be in the way." "Yeah, that too." Silence. Just wind and the distant crackle of burning fuel. Then Broly's aura guttered. Didn't vanish. Didn't retreat. Just pulled inward, condensing around him instead of radiating outward. His breathing slowed. His fists unclenched. "I don't want to fight you," Broly said. Mark's shoulders sagged with relief. "Good. Because I really don't want to fight you either. But I won't let them cage me. Then we'll figure out something else. Together." Broly studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Short, final. Mark keyed his earpiece. "Cecil, stand down. I've got this." "Negative. Target is still active. Target has a name. It's Broly. And if you send those jets in again, you're going to force him to defend himself. And trust me, you don't want to see what that looks like." "Are you threatening me, Mark?" "I'm telling you the truth. Back off. Give me time." The silence stretched. Mark could almost hear Cecil calculating weighing options, running scenarios. Finally, "You have 1 hour. After that, this becomes a military operation." The jets peeled off, heading east. The sound faded. The desert settled into an uneasy quiet. Eve landed next to Mark, still glowing faintly. "That was insane." "Yeah. Also kind of brave. Or stupid. I'm still deciding." Broly hadn't moved. Just stood there, energy field dimmed, but present. Waiting. Mark turned to face him fully. "Okay, so, we've got an hour before Cecil runs out of patience. What do you want?" Broly's answer was immediate. "To leave. Leave where Earth, this dimension." "Yes." Mark's stomach sank. He didn't know how to help with that. Didn't know if it was even possible. But he'd bought them time. Now he had to figure out what to do with it. Behind them, the wreckage of 3 helicopters smoldered. Above them, the sky held the promise of more violence if the wrong choice got made. And in the middle of it all, 2 people who'd started as enemies trying to figure out if they could be anything else. The hour didn't last 30 minutes. Mark was trying to explain dimensional theory to Broly badly because he didn't really understand it himself when Eve's head snapped skyward. Her hands lit up pink molecules already restructuring into defensive configurations. "Something's coming," she said. "Fast." Mark followed her gaze. At first, nothing. Just blue sky and the distant contrails from Cecil's retreating jets. Then a glint. A streak. Something punching through the atmosphere with the kind of speed that left a plasma trail. Not a meteor. Not a missile. Something alive. The object hit the desert 300 yards away, with an impact that made Broly's earlier arrival look gentle. The shock wave rolled outward in a visible wall of compressed air. Sand vaporized. The ground rippled like liquid. When the dust cleared, a figure stood in the crater. Humanoid. Male. Tall and lean with the kind of musculature that came from a lifetime of conquest. His uniform was gray and white clean despite the landing. His expression carried the casual arrogance of someone who'd never encountered meaningful resistance. Viltrumite. Mark's stomach dropped. No, not now. The Viltrumite rose into the air without visible effort, scanning the battlefield. His eyes tracked the destroyed helicopters, the melted glass, the energy signatures still radiating from Broly. Then he smiled. Interesting, the Viltrumite said. His voice carried across the distance with unnatural clarity. A distress beacon from a scout ship and a battlefield that suggests someone actually made one of our people bleed. I had to see this for myself. He flew toward them in a straight line, unhurried. Predatory. Mark positioned himself between the Viltrumite and Broly. This is Earth territory. You have no authority here. The Viltrumite stopped 20 feet away, hovering. His smile widened. I am Craig, 3rd Lieutenant of the Viltrum Empire. I have authority wherever I choose to exercise it. His gaze shifted past Mark to Broly. Is that the weapon that damaged our vessel? He's not a weapon. I'm talking to the strong one child. Craig's tone didn't change. Didn't get angry. Just dismissed Mark like a parent correcting a misbehaving toddler. You, the one radiating interesting energy. Did you destroy a Viltrumite scout ship? Broly said nothing, just watched Craig with the same flat patience he'd shown the helicopters. Not much of a talker, Craig mused. That's fine. I prefer subjects who express themselves through action anyway. He looked back at Mark. Step aside, Grayson. This doesn't concern you. Mark's fists clenched. How do you know my name? We know everything about this world. We know who protects it. We know how weak that protection is. Craig drifted closer. Now step aside or I'll move you myself. You're not touching him. Then you're choosing to be collateral damage. Craig moved, not fast by Viltrumite standards. Not an all-out blitz, just fast enough to prove a point. He covered the distance in a blink and drove his fist into Mark's stomach with surgical precision. The air left Mark's lungs in an explosive gasp. He folded around the impact vision, whiting out. Before he could recover, Craig grabbed him by the throat and accelerated upward. They cleared 200 feet in a second. Craig stopped, held Mark at arm's length, and studied him like a specimen. Your father was strong, Craig said conversationally. You're not. You have his blood, but none of his conviction. It makes you soft. Mark clawed at the hand around his throat. Couldn't breathe, couldn't get leverage. The world tunneled. But you'll make an excellent demonstration. Craig dove. They hit the desert at terminal velocity. The impact cratered the ground 30 feet deep. Mark's bones rattled. His suit tore. Blood filled his mouth. Craig released him and stepped back, brushing dust from his uniform. Stay down, boy. The adults are talking. Mark tried to stand. Got halfway up before his legs gave out. Broly watched the Viltrumite hurt Mark with the detached calculation of someone cataloging a threat. The gray uniformed man was strong, fast, efficient. No wasted movement, no hesitation, familiar. Broly had known people like this, warriors who fought because dominance was their native language, who hurt others not from malice, but from a fundamental belief that strength granted permission. The Viltrumite turned toward him, leaving Mark gasping in the dirt. Now then, Craig said. Let's see what you can do. Broly didn't move, didn't speak, just kept his eyes on the Viltrumite while his peripheral vision tracked Mark struggling to breathe. The young man who'd given him water, who'd stood between him and the jets, who'd called him by name instead of calling him a threat bleeding now because of someone else's arrogance. Craig noticed the look. "Oh, I see. You formed an attachment." He glanced back at Mark with theatrical consideration. "Should I hurt him more? Would that motivate you to—" Broly moved. No aura, no transformation, just raw speed that closed the distance before Craig finished his sentence. Broly's fist caught the Viltrumite across the jaw with enough force to change the trajectory of his entire body. Craig tumbled through the air like a doll, confused shock replacing arrogance. He caught himself 50 yards away, hovering one hand touching his face. When he pulled his fingers away, there was blood. Not much, just a few drops, but enough. Craig stared at his own blood like it was a language he'd forgotten how to read. You actually hit me." Broly landed between Craig and Mark. His posture shifted, no longer defensive, no longer waiting, protective. "Don't touch him again," Broly said. The words came out quiet, simple, absolute. Craig's expression cycled through disbelief, then anger, then something darker, battle lust. "Oh, this is going to be fun." He came in hard and fast, leading with a haymaker designed to shatter reinforced Viltrumite bone. Broly deflected it with his forearm, redirected the momentum, and drove his knee into Craig's ribs. The Viltrumite grunted. Actually grunted. Like he'd felt it. Craig spun, delivered a vicious backhand. Broly took it on the shoulder, rocked back 2 inches, then surged forward with a combination that would have looked simple if it weren't so devastatingly effective. Jab, cross, uppercut. Each strike landed with precision that spoke to instinct rather than training. Each impact sent shockwaves rippling across the desert floor. Craig blocked the uppercut barely and tried to grab Broly's arm for a throw. Broly twisted out of the grip and headbutted him instead. More blood. This time from Craig's nose. The Viltrumite backpedaled, wiping his face expression, shifting from excitement to something closer to concern. "What are you—" Broly didn't answer. Just advanced. 1 step, 2. Craig launched himself skyward, trying for altitude and distance. Broly followed without hesitation, rocketing upward, with none of the grace of flight, but all of its effectiveness. They met 500 feet up. The collision shook windows in Las Vegas. Round. Eve knelt beside Mark, hands already working to stabilize his injuries. Broken ribs, internal bleeding, concussion. Nothing immediately fatal, but nothing good either. "Stay still," she said. "I've got you." Mark coughed blood. Broly is handling it. Above them, 2 figures traded blows that painted the sky with shockwaves. Broly fought with the brutal efficiency of someone who'd learned that hesitation got you killed. Craig fought with centuries of experience and the righteous fury of someone confronting an impossibility. Neither was winning. But Craig was bleeding more. "He's protecting you," Eve said quietly. "You realize that, right? He switched gears the moment Craig hurt you." Mark's vision swam. "Need to help him. You can barely breathe. You go up there, you die. Can't just let him. He's not alone anymore, Mark." Eve's voice softened. "You already helped him by being worth protecting." Craig caught Broly's fist mid-swing and twisted, trying to break the wrist. The joint held. Craig's eyes widened. "Your bone density is—" Broly headbutted him again. They tumbled through the air, locked together, trading punches that would have killed anything else on Earth. Craig got in a solid hit to Broly's temple. Broly responded with a knee to the solar plexus that made the Viltrumite cough. "Enough," Craig roared. He grabbed Broly by the throat, same move he'd used on Mark, and accelerated toward the ground. They hit hard enough to crack bedrock. Craig rolled clear, breathing hard. His uniform was torn. Blood ran from his nose, his mouth a cut above his eye. He looked like he'd been in a real fight for the first time in decades. Broly stood up from the crater. His armor was cracked worse now, more blood on his face. But his eyes were clear, focused. "This isn't over," Craig snarled. "The Empire doesn't tolerate leave." One word. Broly's voice didn't rise. Didn't carry threat, just stated a fact. Craig's jaw worked. Pride warred with pragmatism. He was strong enough to keep fighting. Maybe even strong enough to win if he was willing to push into lethal territory. But the blood on his hands said maybe not. "You've made an enemy today," Craig said. "The Empire will return, with more ships, more soldiers, and when we do—" "I won't be here," Broly said. That stopped Craig short. "What? Not your planet? Not my fight?" Broly glanced toward where Mark lay. "But if you touch him again, I'll make it my fight." Craig followed the look, processed the implied threat, did the math. Then he rose into the air slowly, keeping his eyes on Broly the entire time. "This galaxy doesn't have room for two dominant species," Craig said. "Eventually, you'll have to choose a side." "Already chose," Broly said. "My own." Craig hovered there for another moment, memorizing Broly's face. Then he shot upward, punching through the atmosphere in a streak of gray and white. Gone. Broly watched until the plasma trail faded. Then he walked over to where Eve was working on Mark. "Is he okay?" Broly asked. Eve looked up, surprised by the concern in his voice. "He will be. Thanks to you." Broly knelt down. Mark's eyes were half open, struggling to focus. "Hey," Mark whispered. You made him bleed." "You gave me water first," Broly said. Simple, transactional. A debt acknowledged. Mark tried to smile, coughed instead. "We're even then." "No." Mark's expression fell. "You stood in front of me," Broly continued. "Twice, even when I was dangerous. That's not something you repay with one fight." Understanding dawned in Mark's eyes. Not friendship, not yet. But something that could become it. Trust. Eve's scanner beeped. "Mark needs a hospital. Real medical care, not just my patch jobs." Broly stood, looked around the desert. Battlefield melted glass, destroyed helicopters, craters, measuring the escalation of violence. Somewhere out there, Cecil was watching, calculating, deciding what came next. And somewhere up there, a Viltrumite was reporting that Earth had something on it that could make them bleed. The hour was up. The real problems were just beginning. The Viltrumite scout ship hung in low orbit, a gray wedge against the black. It had been transmitting for 20 minutes steady pulses of data describing the anomaly on Earth's surface. Threat assessment, power readings, recommendations for containment or elimination, standard protocol for an empire that didn't tolerate surprises. Inside the ship, 2 crew members monitored the feeds. They'd watched Craig descend, watched him engage, watched him bleed. Now they watched him retreat. "Should we provide support?" the junior officer asked. The pilot's jaw tightened. Craig issued no distress call. If we intervene without authorization, it undermines his authority. "He's bleeding. He's also 3rd lieutenant. He doesn't need our help unless he asks for it." Below them, Craig punched through the cloud layer plasma trail marking his ascent. His trajectory wasn't toward the ship, just away, putting distance between himself and the thing that had made him reevaluate his assumptions about this backwater world. The junior officer leaned closer to his console. "Sir, we're detecting another energy signature. Rising fast." Craig doubling back. "No, different signature. The anomaly." The pilot's hands moved to the weapons console. "Lock target. Prepare." The ship lurched. No warning, no proximity alert. Just sudden catastrophic impact from below. Metal shrieked, hull plating buckled. The artificial gravity failed and both crew members slammed into their restraints. Through the viewport, they saw him. The anomaly. The one who'd made Craig bleed. Rising out of Earth's atmosphere with the same unstoppable momentum he'd shown on the surface. His green aura blazed against the void, bright enough to wash out the stars. He wasn't flying. Not really. Just propelling himself upward through sheer force of will, an energy like physics was a suggestion he'd decided to ignore. The pilot slapped the emergency beacon. "This is Scout Ship Gamma 7. We are under attack by unknown hostile. Request immediate." Broly punched through the hull. Not through an airlock, not through a weak point, just straight through that 18 inches of Viltrumite war-grade alloy, like it was tissue paper. Atmosphere vented explosively. The pilot grabbed for his helmet. Didn't make it. The pressure differential ripped him from his seat and sucked him toward the breach. Broly caught him by the arm. Not gently, not carefully. But he didn't let the Viltrumite die, just held him there while his other hand gripped the hull and tore. Metal screamed. Structural supports sheared. The ship began to break apart along stress lines that had been rated to survive atmospheric re-entry. Broly ripped a 20-foot section of hull completely free and threw it into the black. The junior officer, still strapped in, stared through his helmet's faceplate at the destruction. This wasn't combat. This wasn't battle. This was demolition. Systematic. Purposeful. The ship's power core destabilized. Red warnings cascaded across every working console. Broly released the pilot, let him drift toward what remained of the ship's interior, and turned his attention to the engine housing. He grabbed it with both hands and pulled. The fusion containment cracked. Blue-white light spilled from the breach, beautiful and lethal. Broly's aura flared brighter, shielding him from radiation that would have killed anything organic within 100 yards. He tore the engine free and crushed it in his hands like an aluminum can. The ship went dark. Emergency power kicked in for exactly 3 seconds before Broly destroyed that too. The two Viltrumites floated in the wreckage alive, but helpless, watching this creature dismantle their vessel with the casual efficiency of someone taking apart a broken appliance. Then Broly stopped, looked around the debris field, and found what he was looking for. The communications array. Still transmitting on emergency power from a shielded battery. Still sending data to whatever Viltrumite monitoring stations were in range. Broly stared at it for a long moment. Then he grabbed the array, crushed it, and threw the wreckage into Earth's gravity well. It burned up in the atmosphere like a shooting star. The last transmission cut off mid-pulse. 12 light years away, on a Viltrumite listening post buried in an asteroid field. An operator noticed the sudden silence from Scout Ship Gamma 7. "Transmission terminated," she reported. "All feeds from Earth sector offline." Her supervisor looked up from his own console. "Equipment failure, negative. Last transmission showed hull breach and catastrophic power loss. Emergency beacon activated for 14 seconds, then ceased." "Play it back." The recording was audio only. Visual feeds had failed first. But the sound was enough. Metal tearing, pressure alarms, someone shouting coordinates. Then static. The supervisor's expression hardened. Mark it as hostile action. Flag the planet for containment assessment. Sir Craig was on that mission. Then Craig either survived or didn't. Either way, the Empire needs to know what destroyed one of our vessels. The operator keyed the priority channel. Within minutes, the report would reach Viltrum itself. Within hours, tactical officers would be calculating response scenarios. And within days, someone would make the decision about whether Earth was worth the resources to pacify. The last transmission from Gamma 7 had included something unusual. A power reading that didn't match any known terrestrial metahuman. Energy output in ranges that suggested dimensional anomaly or weapons-grade celestial interference. The kind of reading that made even Viltrumites proceed with caution. On Earth, Cecil watched the satellite feed with the expression of a man watching his worst-case scenario unfold in real time. "Confirm destruction," he said. "Confirm, sir. The Viltrumite vessel is in pieces. Debris fields spreading across low orbit. Multiple sections entering atmosphere. Casualties. Unknown. Thermal imaging shows 2 heat signatures moving away from the wreckage. They're alive. And Broly, descending, ETA to surface in 90 seconds. Cecil leaned back in his chair. In the span of 2 hours, an unknown entity had destroyed millions of dollars in GDA equipment. Put Mark Grayson in intensive care, fought a Viltrumite lieutenant to a standstill, destroyed a Viltrumite scout ship in orbit, and most importantly, proven that Earth had something on it capable of making the Empire bleed. "We're going to war," Cecil said quietly. "We might not want it. We might not choose it. But that ship's distress signal just made us a priority target." "Sir, what are your orders?" Cecil watched Broly's descent on the main display. The green energy signature cutting through the atmosphere like a meteor that had decided to go in reverse. "Nothing," Cecil said. "We do nothing." His staff stared at him. "That thing destroyed a Viltrumite ship without breaking a sweat," Cecil continued. "If it wanted Earth pacified, we'd already be dead. If it wanted to conquer us, we'd be kneeling. But it's not doing either of those things." "Then what is it doing?" "Surviving. And maybe," Cecil's eyes narrowed, "looking for a way home." Broly landed in the desert, 20 yards from where Eve was still stabilizing Mark. The impact cratered the ground, but didn't shatter it. Controlled, deliberate. His aura faded to a low simmer. Eve looked up, hands still glowing pink. "You destroyed their ship." Not a question, an observation. Broly nodded once. "Why?" Eve asked. "They were leaving." "They were transmitting." Broly's voice was rough from exertion. "Sending information, calling more." Eve processed that. "So you cut the communication?" "Yes." "You think like a soldier. I think like someone who's been hunted." The distinction mattered. Soldiers followed a strategy. Hunted things followed survival instinct. And survival instinct said, "Eliminate the beacon before the pack arrives." Mark stirred, consciousness flickering. His eyes found Broly and managed to focus, despite the concussion and painkillers Eve had synthesized. "You went up there," Mark whispered. "Their ship was sending signals. I stopped it. By destroying the whole ship." "Yes." Mark tried to laugh. It came out as a wheeze. "Cecil's going to have opinions about that." "Cecil can have many opinions." Broly knelt down so Mark didn't have to strain his neck. "How bad Bad, Eve answered for him. Broken ribs, punctured lungs, severe internal bruising. I've patched what I can, but he needs real medical care. Hours ago. Then we should move him. GDA already dispatched a medical team. They're 10 minutes out. Eve's expression softened slightly. You could have left. After Craig fled, you could have just walked away. The ship was a threat. To Earth, not to you. Broly met her eyes, didn't respond, didn't need to. The answer was obvious if you'd been paying attention. He hadn't destroyed the ship for Earth. He destroyed it for the person who'd given him water and called him by name and stood between him and violence twice in one day. The person now bleeding on the sand because someone else had decided to test boundaries. Eve understood. She'd seen the way Broly positioned himself between Mark and every threat. The way his energy flared when Craig grabbed Mark's throat. The way he'd tracked Mark's condition even while dismantling a Viltrumite war vessel. This wasn't heroism. This was something simpler and more dangerous. Loyalty earned through kindness in a moment of weakness. They're going to come back, Eve said. You know that, right? The Viltrumites don't forget slights. They'll send more ships, stronger forces. I know. And you're still planning to leave. Broly looked up at the sky, at the debris burning up in the atmosphere like a promise and a warning. I don't belong here, he said. This isn't my world, not my war. But I won't leave until he's safe. Mark's hand moved slightly, found Broly's arm, gripped it weakly. You don't owe me anything, Mark managed. You stood for me when no one else did. That's just what you're supposed to do. Most people don't. The simple truth of it hung in the desert air. Mark wanted to argue, wanted to say that humanity was better than Broly thought. That kindness was common, not rare. But he'd seen the footage of the helicopters opening fire. He'd heard Cecil's cold calculations. He knew how close they'd come to turning Broly into exactly the monster they'd feared. Sometimes one person's decency was the only thing standing between civilization and atrocity. And sometimes that was enough. The sound of approaching helicopters broke the moment. Medical insignias, not military. Cecil had learned his lesson. Eve stood creating a landing zone with restructured matter flat stable visible from a distance. Broly didn't move. Just stayed kneeling next to Mark, a silent guardian that radiated don't touch him in every line of his posture. The medical team touched down and rushed forward with stretchers and equipment. They hesitated when they saw Broly, some primal instinct warning them that proximity was dangerous. He's fine, Eve called out. Focus on Mark. They obeyed, moving with professional efficiency. IVs, stabilization collar, portable scanner feeding data to whatever hospital Cecil had designated. Mark was loaded onto the stretcher. He tried to stay conscious, tried to keep his eyes on Broly. Don't leave yet, Mark said. Promise you won't leave until... I won't, Broly said. Good. Mark's eyes closed. Because we're not... done. He passed out. The medical team lifted the stretcher and moved toward the helicopter. Eve followed, glancing back once at Broly. Cecil's going to want to talk to you, she said. I don't want to talk to Cecil. Yeah, I figured. Eve almost smiled. For what it's worth, you did the right thing today. Even if the reasons were complicated. The helicopters lifted off, dust swirling in their wake. Broly stood alone in the desert, surrounded by evidence of escalation. Melted glass, burning wreckage, craters measuring the cost of misunderstanding. Above him, debris from the Viltrumite ship streaked across the sky. And somewhere out there, an empire was receiving a report that would change everything. Broly had tried to stop the signal, but you can't kill information once it's already spreading. The galaxy knew now. Earth had something dangerous on it, and dangerous things attracted attention. The rumor spread through the underworld networks like blood in water. A Viltrumite had bled, not from another Viltrumite, not from some cosmic entity or reality-warping god. From something on Earth, a backwater planet barely worth the Empire's attention. In a cantina on Talescria, where mercenaries and arena fighters gathered to trade stories and contracts, the conversation turned to speculation. What could make a Viltrumite bleed dimensional weapon Kryptonian survivor? Ancient war machine activated, Battle Beast sat in the corner silent, listening. He'd fought Viltrumites before. Strong, fast, durable enough to survive most things the galaxy could throw at them. But predictable. They relied on their natural advantages and centuries of genetic superiority. They'd forgotten what it meant to face someone who lived for the challenge. Battle Beast had spent decades searching for a fight that mattered. Something that could push him past his limits, make him feel alive instead of just functional. The bartender's voice carried across the room. Ship got destroyed too. Torn apart in orbit. No survivors, just wreckage. Battle Beast stood. His mace scraped against the floor as he lifted it. Where? His voice was a low rumble, more felt than heard. The cantina went quiet. Everyone knew what that tone meant. Earth sector, someone answered. Sol system, third planet. Battle Beast walked toward the door. The crowd parted without thinking about it. You're going after it, the bartender called. Battle Beast paused, turned his head slightly. I'm going to meet it. Then he was gone. 3 days later, a ship entered Earth's orbit. No weapons lock, no aggressive maneuvering, just a slow, deliberate approach that registered on every GDA sensor. Cecil was in a meeting with the Joint Chiefs when the alert came through. Sir, unidentified vessel, entering atmosphere. Single occupant. Non-Viltrumite signature. Cecil's hand tightened on his coffee cup. Of course there is. Patch me through to the ship. Static. Then a voice deep-controlled, carrying the weight of someone who'd never had to raise it. I am Battle Beast. I seek the one who made the Empire bleed. I offer single combat. No interference. No tricks. The Joint Chiefs stared at Cecil. You want to fight on Earth? Cecil asked. No, I select the arena. Neutral ground. If your warrior agrees, I will provide coordinates. And if we refuse, then I will wait. But others will come, less patient, less honorable. A pause. I offer clean battle. That is more courtesy than most would give. Cecil looked at the satellite feed. The ship held position, making no aggressive moves. Waiting. Give me the coordinates, Cecil said. Stunned, Broly stood on a rooftop in downtown Chicago watching the city move below him. 3 days since the fight with Craig. 3 days of waiting for Mark to heal enough to have conversations instead of just breathing. Eve had been checking on him periodically, bringing food, making sure he hadn't vanished, being kind in the careful way people are when they're not sure if kindness will be accepted. His earpiece crackled. Cecil's voice clipped and professional. Broly, we need to talk. No. Someone's here to fight you. Calls himself Battle Beast. Says he's offering single combat, off-world, neutral arena. Broly's hands clenched. I'm not interested. He says others will come if you don't accept. Less honorable ones. He's offering to keep this contained. Then tell him no. I did. He said he'd wait. Cecil's voice dropped. Look, I don't like you. I don't trust you. But I've read enough reports to know you're not a mindless destroyer. You made choices on that battlefield. Surgical ones. This beast thing. It's not going to be surgical. It's going to drag Earth into its wake, whether you fight or not. Broly closed his eyes. Always the same. Always someone looking for a fight. Using leverage. Using threats. Where? Broly asked. Asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. He's already there. Says he'll wait one day. Fine. Broly. Cecil hesitated. For what it's worth, you could just leave. Refuse the fight. Find your way home. I promised Mark I wouldn't leave yet. Mark's in a coma. Then I keep my promise until he wakes up to release me from it. Silence. Then Cecil sighed. Coordinates incoming. Try not to destroy the whole belt. So, the asteroid was 3 miles across barren rock, tumbling through the void. Battle Beast stood at its center mace, resting against his shoulder, eyes scanning the stars. He didn't have to wait long. Green light announced Broly's arrival, energy blazing as he descended onto the asteroid's surface. No grace, no ceremony, just landing hard enough to crack the stone beneath his feet. Battle Beast smiled. You came. Broly said nothing, just studied his opponent. Leonine features, dense musculature, scars visible through the fur, each one a story a battle survived. This wasn't someone who fought for conquest or duty. This was someone who fought because it was the only thing that made sense. I am Battle Beast, the warrior said. I have traveled far to test myself against you. You made Viltrumites bleed. I want to see how. I'm not here to entertain you. Good. Entertainment is cheap. I seek challenge. Glory. The moment when two warriors push past their limits and become something greater. Battle Beast shifted his stance. Will you give me that? Broly's energy field pulsed around him. Not aura anymore. Just raw power held barely in check. If I fight you, will you leave Earth alone? I have no interest in Earth, only in you. Then let's finish this. Battle Beast's smile widened. He charged, fast. Faster than Craig, faster than anything Broly had fought on Earth. The mace swung in an arc designed to break bone and shatter armor. Broly caught it. Not the handle, the head. His hand closed around the weapon's striking surface and stopped it dead. Battle Beast's eyes lit up with pure joy. Yes. He released the mace, let Broly have it, and drove his fist into Broly's ribs instead. The impact echoed across the asteroid. Broly stumbled back 3 steps. Battle Beast pressed the advantage. No weapon now, just claws and fangs, and the brutal efficiency of someone who'd mastered combat in its purest form. Broly dropped the mace and met him head-on. They collided like tectonic plates, fist against claw, knee against jaw, headbutt against shoulder. Every strike carried the weight of warriors who understood that hesitation meant death. Blood appeared. Not much at first, just scrapes and cuts. But it was there. Battle Beast laughed. You don't hold back. Good holding back is cowardice. Broly didn't respond, just fought with the same mechanical precision he'd shown against Craig. Block, counter, strike. No wasted movement. No telegraphed attacks. But Battle Beast was different from Craig. The Viltrumite had relied on superiority and experience. Battle Beast relied on instinct and adaptation. Every time Broly adjusted his pattern, Beast adjusted faster. They broke apart, circling, both bleeding, both breathing hard. The asteroid beneath them spiderwebbed with cracks from the impacts. "You fight like prey that learn to bite back," Battle Beast observed. "Defensive, reactive, efficient." Broly's fists clenched. "But there's something else," Battle Beast continued. "Under all that control, I can feel it. A furnace you're keeping locked down." "You talk too much." "I talk when the fight deserves commentary." Battle Beast retrieved his mace. "Show me what happens when you stop controlling it." "No." "Why not?" "Because I can't always stop once I start." Battle Beast's expression shifted. Respect mixed with something darker. Understanding, maybe. "You're afraid of your own power." "I'm careful with it." "Careful is slow death." Battle Beast spun the mace energy crackling along its surface. "But I respect the choice." "Very well. I'll push harder. Force the furnace open." He moved. Different this time. Not testing, not probing. Pure aggression meant to overwhelm and break through defenses. The mace caught Broly across the shoulder. The energy discharge sent him flying across the asteroid. He crashed into a boulder hard enough to pulverize it. Battle Beast was on him before he could recover. Mace swinging, claws raking. No space to breathe or think or plan. Broly's powers surged in response. Not the controlled flickers from before. Not the measured releases he'd used against the helicopters. This was the furnace door cracking open. Green light erupted from his body in waves. His muscles swelled. His eyes lost focus, replaced by something more primal. Battle Beast saw it happening and grinned wider. "There! That's what I wanted," Broly roared. The sound carried through vacuum via pure energy displacement. The asteroid shook. Cracks became canyons. The entire rock structure began to destabilize. Broly moved. Battle Beast barely blocked the first strike. The second one drove him back 50 yards. The third one shattered his mace. The weapon, forged from materials that could survive atmospheric re-entry, broke like glass. Battle Beast stared at the fragments, then at Broly, who stood wreathed in power that made the earlier displays look like candle flames. "Magnificent," Battle Beast breathed. Broly charged again. Battle Beast met him without hesitation, weaponless but unafraid. They traded blows that would have killed lesser beings, strikes that carved new geography into the dying asteroid. Battle Beast landed a perfect hit to Broly's temple. Broly's head snapped sideways. He grabbed Battle Beast's arm and threw him into space. Not far, just enough to create distance. Battle Beast corrected his trajectory, landed back on the asteroid, bleeding from a dozen wounds. They stood across from each other, both damaged, both past normal limits. Battle Beast raised a hand. "Enough." Broly's power dimmed slightly. Confusion flickered across his face. "I concede," Battle Beast said. "You win." "I didn't." "You broke my mace. You drew more blood. You fought with controlled fury that could have killed me if you'd chosen to release it fully." Battle Beast touched his chest where 3 claw marks ran parallel. "This is the closest I've come to death in years. I am satisfied." Broly's energy field collapsed inward, condensing back down. His breathing slowed. The primal edge faded from his eyes. "You stopped," Broly said. "Why?" Because I got what I came for. Proof that warriors still exist who can challenge me. You're not the strongest I've ever faced, but you're the most interesting. You fight not because you love it, but because you must. That discipline. Battle Beast nodded slowly. That's worthy of respect. He turned, began walking toward where his ship waited on the asteroid's far side. We will fight again, Battle Beast called back. When you've had time to master what's inside you. When you're ready to release it without fear. That will be a battle worth traveling galaxies for. Broly watched him go. Didn't argue, didn't threaten, just watched. Battle Beast paused at the horizon. The one you protect, the young Viltrumite. He chose well when he showed you kindness. Guard him carefully. This galaxy devours the compassionate. Then he was gone, ship lifting off and punching out of the asteroid belt with the same efficiency he'd brought to combat. Broly stood alone on the dying rock, surrounded by evidence of a fight that had pushed him closer to the edge than he'd wanted to go. But he'd held it. Barely. But he'd held it. The furnace was still contained. For now. Mark woke up on the 7th day. His first coherent thought was pain. His second was confusion about why he was still alive to feel it. His third was Broly's name. Easy, Eve's voice came from somewhere to his left. You've been out for a week. Broken ribs, punctured lung, internal bleeding. I've been helping the doctors, but you still need to take it slow. Mark's eyes focused. Hospital room. Medical equipment. Evening light through the window. Broly. He's fine. He fought Battle Beast 3 days ago on an asteroid. Won, apparently. Beast retreated. Said it was the best fight he'd had in years. Mark processed that. He's still here. He promised you he'd stay until you woke up. Something warm settled in Mark's chest that had nothing to do with healing. Where is he now? Eve's expression shifted. That's the problem. Cecil's been trying to reach him for the last hour. There's a situation. The Viltrumite fleet emerged from hyperdrive at the edge of Earth's solar system. Not a scouting party, not a diplomatic envoy. 16 warships arranged in formation that spoke to one purpose: conquest assessment. At the center of the fleet, Grand Regent Thrag stood on the bridge of his command vessel, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the blue-green planet displayed on the tactical screen. Status of the anomaly, he asked. Still on the surface, sir. Energy readings match the signature that destroyed Scout Ship Gamma 7. And Craig's report. He characterizes the entity as extremely dangerous, but not overtly hostile. Combat capable at or above Viltrumite baseline. Unknown origin, unknown vulnerabilities. Thrag's expression didn't change. He'd read Craig's full report. The parts that were honest and the parts where professional pride had edited out the fear. Craig had bled. More than bled. He'd been forced to retreat by something that shouldn't exist, according to everything the Empire knew about this sector. That bothered Thrag less than the implications. If Earth had one anomaly, it might have more. If it could make Viltrumites bleed, other species would take notice. And the Empire's strength rested not on invincibility. They'd never been truly invincible, but on the perception of invincibility. One crack in that perception could destabilize centuries of conquest. Hail the planet, Thrag said. Tell them the Grand Regent wishes to speak with their defender. Cecil's emergency line went off at 3 a.m. He answered it already awake, already dressed, already moving toward the operations center. Sir Viltrumite Fleet, 16 vessels. They're demanding to speak with Broly. Cecil's blood went cold. Get me Broly, now! We've been trying, sir. He's not responding. Then find him physically. Pull every satellite feed, traffic cameras, anything. I need him in the next 10 minutes, or this planet becomes a battlefield. Canon. Broly sat on the hospital roof watching the stars. He'd been there for hours waiting for Mark to wake up. Eve had promised to call when it happened, but the waiting made his skin crawl with the same restless energy he'd felt on Vampa between his father's training sessions. His comm device, the one Cecil had forced on him, buzzed incessantly. He ignored it. Whatever Cecil needed could wait until morning. Then the sky changed. Not visibly, but something in the air pressure shifted. The electromagnetic spectrum flickered. Every bird within 3 miles took flight simultaneously, instinct screaming danger. Broly stood. 16 shapes descended through the atmosphere in perfect formation, not burning like meteors, not struggling against gravity, just floating down with the casual arrogance of beings who'd never needed permission to be anywhere. Viltrumites. They stopped 1,000 feet above the city, hovering in a pattern that put the hospital directly in their center. A message without words: we know what you care about. The lad figure descended alone. Older than Craig, harder. His uniform was white and gray with insignia that marked him as something more than a soldier. This was authority personified. Thrag landed on the hospital roof 10 feet from Broly. His eyes scanned the Saiyan with clinical precision, cataloging threats and weaknesses. I am Grand Regent Thrag, ruler of the Viltrum Empire. You destroyed our scout ship, injured our personnel. He paused. I'm here to determine if you're a threat or a weapon. Broly didn't respond. Just watched Thrag the way he'd learned to watch predators. I'm neither. Then you're irrelevant. But I'm willing to negotiate. Join the Empire. Serve as a forward shock trooper. You'll have battle, purpose. No. You refuse without hearing terms. I don't serve anyone. Thrag's gaze drifted toward the hospital. The young Viltrumite healing inside. Mark Grayson, you've formed an attachment. Broly's power pulsed, just once. Warning. Thrag noticed. That makes you predictable. His voice dropped. Join us willingly, and Earth remains beneath our notice. Mark Grayson lives. You get purpose without persecution. Refuse, and we determine whether this planet is worth pacifying. Whether Mark is worth keeping as an example. Whether you're worth capturing. Behind Thrag, the other 15 Viltrumites shifted formation. Tightening. Professional. Broly's fists clenched. And if I refuse, then we determine whether Earth is worth the resources to pacify. Whether Mark Grayson is worth keeping alive as an example or eliminating as a symbol. Whether you're worth capturing for study or simply removing as a variable. Thrag's smile never wavered. I'm offering you control over the outcome. That's more generous than most species receive. Broly looked past Thrag at the hovering Viltrumites. 16 of the Empire's finest, each one strong enough to level cities, coordinated enough to dismantle armies. And behind them, somewhere in the hospital, Mark was waking up. Hurting but alive. Safe because Broly had made choices that protected him. That safety was conditional now. Broly closed his eyes, breathed, felt the furnace inside him, the thing Battle Beast had tried to release, the thing Paragus had tried to chain, the thing that made him dangerous and alone and wrong for every world he touched. When he opened his eyes, the decision was made. "No," Broly said. "I won't join you. I won't let you hurt him. And I won't let you use him against me." Thrag's smile faded. "Then you've chosen poorly. Maybe. But it's my choice." "So be it." Thrag raised his hand. The signal. Broly moved first, not toward Thrag, toward the nearest Viltrumite in the formation, the one whose positioning suggested command and control functions, the one whose comm array would coordinate the others. He covered the distance before they could react. His fist drove through the Viltrumite's torso with surgical precision, not killing, but removing him from combat immediately. The formation broke. Thrag's eyes narrowed. Strategic targeting. You think like a soldier despite claiming otherwise. Broly didn't respond. Just moved to the next priority target. The heavy assault specialist. The one whose power signature suggested area effect capabilities that could threaten the hospital. 2 strikes. Ribs broken, jaw dislocated, falling. The remaining Viltrumites swarmed. Broly fought in the center of their formation like a stone in a river, immovable redirecting force breaking their coordination with precisely placed strikes. He didn't try to kill, didn't have time for that luxury, just disabled. Removed threats. Broke the machine one piece at a time. A Viltrumite grabbed him from behind. Broly drove his head backward, felt the nose break twisted free. Another came from above. Broly caught the strike, redirected the momentum, used the Viltrumite as a projectile against 2 more. Thrag watched from the roof, analyzing, learning, seeing patterns. "He's not fighting to win," Thrag called to his troops. "He's fighting to protect, exploit that, threaten the hospital." 3 Viltrumites broke from the melee, dove toward the building. Broly's power exploded. Green energy erupted in a sphere that caught all 3 mid-descent and hurled them back into the sky. The shockwave rattled windows across 6 blocks. Car alarms screamed. The hospital's emergency lights kicked on. But the building held. Broly positioned himself between the Viltrumites and the structure. Energy crackling across his skin. Muscles swollen past normal proportions. Eyes fixed on Thrag with absolute clarity. "Don't touch them," Broly said. Simple, final. The same words he'd used before, but this time carrying different weight. This time backed by demonstrated willingness to burn the world down, if that's what protection required. Thrag studied him. Reassessed. 4 Viltrumites disabled, 3 more injured. All because Broly had chosen targets, surgically command structure first, area effect threats, second always positioning to defend rather than destroy. The cost was climbing faster than projected, and not because his forces were weak, because this anomaly fought smart. "Interesting, Asena," Thrag said. He gestured. The formation pulled back, regrouped around him. "You're willing to die for them?" "Yes, but they're not worth dying for. 1 Viltrumite half-breed, 1 insignificant planet." "Why?" Broly didn't answer. Couldn't explain it in terms Thrag would understand. Kindness in a moment of weakness. Water offered without conditions. Someone standing between him and violence when they didn't have to. Those things mattered more than empires. Thrag read the silence correctly. "You're wasted here, protecting prey. But I respect the conviction, even if I can't comprehend it." He looked at his remaining forces, calculated. "Withdraw, full retreat." One of his lieutenants protested. "Sir, we can still..." "No, the cost exceeds the value." Thrag's voice carried command that permitted no argument. This planet isn't worth losing more soldiers, and this anomaly, he looked at Broly, will remove itself eventually. Power without purpose consumes itself. I can wait. He rose into the air. His forces followed. 16 became 12 functional units ascending in formation. Thrag paused at altitude. You've won nothing here today, only delayed. The Empire doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. When you're gone, and you will be gone because things like you don't find peace will return. And Mark Grayson will learn that kindness toward the wrong beings carries consequences. Then they punched through the atmosphere and vanished. Broly stood alone on the roof, power slowly dimming, surrounded by broken Viltrumites who'd been left behind. They'd recover, eventually. But for now, they were just debris from a battle that had resolved through math rather than victory. He'd protected the hospital, protected Mark, kept his promise. But Thrag was right about one thing. This wasn't over. It would never be over as long as Broly remained somewhere people like Thrag could find him. The roof access door burst open. Eve emerged, Mark leaning heavily on her shoulder. His hospital gown was torn, his face was pale, but his eyes were clear and locked on Broly. You kept them away, Mark said, voice rough from intubation and disuse. Broly nodded. Thank you. I made a promise. Yeah. Mark smiled despite the pain. You did? And you kept it even when it nearly killed you. That's what promises mean. Mark looked at the unconscious Viltrumites, at the scorch marks on the roof, at Broly standing alone against the universe. You can't stay, Mark said quietly. Can you? Broly shook his head. Thrag will come back if you do. Yes. And next time he'll bring more. Or worse. Yes. Mark's hands clenched. That's not fair. You saved Earth, saved me, and your reward is exile. Not exile. Just moving on. Broly looked at the sky where the Empire had vanished. I don't belong here anyway. Never did. Where will you go? Away. Somewhere they can't track. Somewhere quiet. Eve spoke up. We can help. Get you to the outer system. Find somewhere the Viltrumites don't patrol. Broly considered. Nodded. That would be useful. Mark pushed away from Eve's support, stood on his own despite the pain, extended his hand. Thank you, Mark said, for everything. For not being the monster they tried to make you. Broly looked at the hand, at the gesture, at the person who'd shown him that not everyone used kindness as a weapon. He took it, shook once. Shook, firm but careful. You stood for me, Broly said. No one else did that. I won't forget. Neither will I. They stood there on the roof as dawn approached. Two warriors from different worlds who'd found common ground in the simple act of choosing not to be what people feared. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. But it was something that mattered. And sometimes, that was enough. 2 days later, Cecil sat in his office reviewing damage reports. 3 hospitals, overcapacity. 47 million in property damage. 7 GDA personnel still in recovery. 3 Viltrumites recovering in secure facilities before inevitable extradition. And 1 anomaly preparing to leave the solar system. His phone rang. Direct line. Stedman? It's Eve. We're ready. Mark insists on being here despite medical advice. Cecil closed the file. I'll be there in 20 minutes. 10. The launch facility was private, one of the black-budget installations that didn't officially exist. A single transport ship sat on the pad, retrofitted for long-range travel. Nothing fancy, just functional. Broly stood beside it, looking smaller somehow, without the threat of immediate violence. His armor had been patched. His wounds had healed with the unnatural speed that marked him as something beyond human baseline. Mark leaned against the facility wall, still wrapped in medical tape under his jacket. Eve hovered nearby, ready to catch him if he fell. Cecil approached across the tarmac. His footsteps echoed in the pre-dawn quiet. "You're really leaving?" Cecil said. Not a question. Broly nodded. "We could use you here." Earth's position in the galaxy just became significantly more complicated. Having someone who can make Viltrumites think twice would be strategically valuable. No. I'm not offering containment. I'm offering partnership. On your terms. Your terms change when circumstances change. Broly met Cecil's eyes. I've seen how systems work, how they justify. You'd use me until I became the problem, then you'd find a way to cage me. Call it protection. Call it necessity. Doesn't matter, still a cage. Cecil's expression didn't shift. You're not wrong. But that doesn't make the offer less genuine. Right now, in this moment, I mean it. I know. That's why I'm refusing now before circumstances change. Silence. Just wind across the tarmac and the distant hum of the ship's generators warming up. For what it's worth, Cecil said, you made choices here that most people with your power wouldn't have made. That counts for something. Does it? To me, yes. To the world? Cecil shrugged. The world's already forgetting. That's what it does. But the people who were there, Mark, Eve, the crews you didn't kill, they'll remember. Broly considered that. Nodded once. Cecil extended his hand. Good luck out there. Try not to destroy any more scout ships unless absolutely necessary. Broly took it, shook once. No promises. Cecil almost smiled. Almost. Then he walked back toward the facility, leaving Mark and Eve to handle the rest. Mark pushed off the wall, walked over slowly. His ribs were healing, but every step was a reminder of Craig's calculated violence. You sure about this? Mark asked. Going alone into space. No plan except away. I've been alone before. That doesn't make it better. No. But it's familiar. Eve activated her powers. Pink light swirled around her hands as she restructured matter. Inside the cargo hold supplies, food synthesizers, water reclamation. Everything Broly would need for months in deep space. We loaded coordinates for the outer belt, she said. Mining stations, abandoned colonies, places the Viltrumites don't patrol regularly. You can stay there. Figure out your next move. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just... Eve's voice softened. Just stay alive, please. It would really suck if you survived all this just to die alone out there. Broly looked at her, at Mark, at these two people who'd somehow decided he was worth saving, despite every reason to see him as a threat. I'll try, he said. Mark stepped forward. Before you go, I need to say this. You saved my life. Probably saved Earth, too, even if nobody's going to build statues about it. And you did it because... He paused, searching for words. Because I gave you water. Because I stood in front of you. Because kindness mattered. It did. It still does. Wherever you end up, whatever happens next, remember that kindness isn't weakness. It's the only thing that separates us from them. Mark gestured vaguely skyward toward where the Empire watched and waited. "Promise me you'll remember that." "I promise." They stood there for a moment. Two warriors from different worlds who'd found something worth protecting in each other. Then Broly turned toward the ship, climbed the ramp, paused at the top. "If you need help," Broly said, "and you can find me, I'll come back." Mark smiled despite the pain. "I know." The ramp closed. The engines ignited. The ship lifted off with the smooth efficiency of Earthling engineering, pushed just past its rated capabilities. Mark and Eve watched it climb through the pre-dawn sky. Watched it punch through the atmosphere. Watched until it was just another star moving against the black. "You think he'll be okay?" Eve asked. "I don't know. I hope so." "He's strong enough to survive anything." "Surviving isn't the same as being okay." Mark's voice carried weight that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. "But he's got something now he didn't have before." "What's that?" "A reason to try." Across the city in a warehouse that didn't appear on any maps, Angstrom Levy stared at the portal generator. Still broken, still dangerous, still capable of pulling things from universes it had no business touching. He'd been trying to fix it, trying to recalibrate the targeting matrix, trying to get back to the plan, find a weapon, aim it at Mark and the threat. Instead, he'd pulled something that had nearly destroyed everything. Something that had fought Viltrumites and Battle Beast and walked away. Something that had looked at Earth's strongest defenders and decided they were worth protecting. Angstrom closed his eyes. "What have I done?" he whispered. The portal generator sat silent, broken, mocking. He'd wanted to prove that Mark Grayson was the problem, that the Viltrumite half-breed would bring nothing but destruction and pain. Instead, he'd proven that sometimes the most dangerous things in the universe were the ones that chose not to be. Angstrom powered down the equipment, locked the warehouse, walked away. Some mistakes weren't meant to be fixed, just learned from. Oh, in the outer belt, a ship drifted between asteroids. Inside, Broly sat in the pilot's chair watching Earth shrink behind him. Blue and white and green, fragile, complicated, full of people who'd shoot first and ask questions never. But also full of people like Mark, like Eve. People who offered water without conditions, who stood between the powerless and violence, who remembered promises. Broly didn't know where he'd end up. Didn't know if he'd ever find a way home to his own universe. Didn't know if home even existed for someone like him, too strong, too damaged, too dangerous. But for the first time, and as long as he could remember, the uncertainty didn't feel like drowning. It felt like choosing. And that was enough. The ship's navigation system pinged. Target coordinates locked. Journey time, 3 weeks. Broly engaged the engines. Behind him, Earth continued spinning, unaware that it had been saved, unaware that a monster had decided to be something else. Ahead of him, the stars waited, cold, distant, infinite, but no longer entirely lonely. The story begins with a scientific mistake. In his obsession with finding a weapon capable of breaking Mark Grayson, Angstrom Levy opens a multiversal portal and pulls the wrong thing through. Instead of a tool he can control, he drags Broly into the Invincible universe. Broly does not arrive as an invader. He arrives wounded, exhausted, and completely out of place, an organism displaced into a hostile system. As expected, the world responds the only way it knows how. Cecil Stedman and the Global Defense Agency choose containment over understanding. Protocols are activated. Restraints are deployed. But the attempt to control Broly strikes directly at the deepest trauma of his life, confinement collars obedience enforced through pain. The eruption that follows is not born of hatred. It is survival. Amid the chaos, Mark Grayson is the first to understand what everyone else misses. Broly is not attacking out of malice, he is reacting. Mark places himself between Broly and the GDA's firepower, taking the impact meant for him. There are no speeches, no bargains, just a choice made with a body instead of words. From that moment on, Broly stops fighting to escape and starts fighting to protect. That choice does not go unnoticed. The shockwaves reach far beyond Earth, drawing the attention of the Viltrumite Empire. An agent is dispatched to deal with the anomaly. When Mark is brutalized as a demonstration of authority, Broly intervenes not in rage, but with intent. One strike is enough to make a Viltrumite bleed. For the first time, the Empire's illusion of invincibility fractures. The conflict escalates beyond the planet. Broly dismantles Viltrumite ships and command systems with precision, pulling the battle away from civilian populations whenever possible. He is not waging war, he is minimizing damage. But information spreads faster than destruction can be contained. In the depths of space, those who live for battle take notice. One of them is Battle Beast. He seeks Broly not for conquest or ideology, but for meaning. Their clash is brutal, primal, and honest. Battle Beast fights for the joy of combat. Broly fights because survival demands it. Broly prevails, but he does not kill. Battle Beast withdraws, intrigued rather than defeated, leaving behind a promise of another encounter. Finally, the conflict draws the attention of Thrag, the supreme leader of the Viltrumites. He does not rage. He does not posture. He delivers an ultimatum: join the Empire or Earth becomes collateral in a necessary war. To Thrag, Broly is not an enemy, he is a strategic risk. Broly refuses both options. Instead of challenging Thrag directly, he strikes at the Empire's structure, disabling key forces, disrupting command hierarchies, and raising the cost of engagement beyond what the Empire is willing to pay. Thrag orders a withdrawal, not out of fear, but calculation. The war is postponed, not ended. Earth survives, but nothing is resolved, understanding that his presence will always invite destruction. Broly chooses to leave. He keeps his promise to Mark, not to become a weapon, not to become a tyrant, and not to let others pay the price for his existence. The story ends without triumph or celebration, only with the quiet weight of consequence. Broly does not save the universe. He simply refuses to become what this universe wants him to be.